of my personality. I like to get along. Now, as I've gotten older, I have formidable confrontation skills, which were never natural, but were keenly developed because I had to have them to be successful in life. You have to be able to have difficult conversation. Tim Ferriss said years ago, you can measure the success of a person by the number of uncomfortable conversations they were willing to have. There's almost a direct correlation. So that means confrontation is part of life, and you need to be good at it. You need to do it. You need to come out and have those hard conversations. And it's incredible to me how many people are so afraid to do that and avoid it. So I have this agreeable personality. So I had to proactively, I had to figure out what my weaknesses are, understand those, and then practice improving on those. My strengths are my strengths, man. They're natural. They flow. The stuff that, if I wanted to be successful, that I needed to work on were the stuff that I suck at. And so the agreeable side, Peterson talked about how scoring that high on agreeableness, you tend to be taken advantage of. You tend to get worked over by people that are more manipulative, more savvy, and more calculating. And what often happens to people who are quite agreeable, they either learn to be confrontational so that they can navigate a more successful future. But also the other thing that can kind of happen to them is they become bitter and jaded because they do things with goodwill and good intent, and then people use them, take advantage of them, and they don't stick up for themselves well enough. So they end up getting the short end. They become bitter, resentful, mistrusting, and jaded. The trick is, rather than becoming jaded, he said, is to become wiser. Don't become bitter. Chalk it up as life's lessons, and then take that to be better next time. And don't lose your agreeableness. That's one of the great traits. Like, don't lose your desire to get along and to invite people, be welcoming, and all of that. Don't lose it, but just become wiser about how you go about it. And so in my later years in life, that has been more my goal, is to become more confrontational by nature, but also in a very respectful way. And to also look at the past as the past and not be bitter over how things turned out or how things ended, and really look at the future, be forward looking in terms of, okay, now I'm doing, I always say, like, 40-year-old Brian succeeded where 30-year-old Brian failed. Now, I'm headed toward 49. Ryan will be 50 next year. And I'm looking at 50-year-old Brian. He's way better at this stuff than 40-year-old Brian was, 45-year-old Brian. And when I look at the world that way, I'm not really bitter. I went through some bitter times, but I'm not really bitter and jaded about the past. I kind of realize that human beings are full of faults, including me, and people are gonna fall prey to all their insecurities and their fears and their foibles and their vices. That's human nature, and I'm no different. So the goal there is to try to navigate as best I can with through life by acknowledging that, yeah, we're all like that, but also, give everyone a little bit of grace. I don't expect you in all of our endeavors to be perfect. I expect you to try to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I won't achieve it, and you won't either. And so grace for one another, knowing that we both start out with the goal to be good is key. But I think it's a daily roll call. In Ryan Halliday's Ego is the Enemy, he talks about how checking your ego and your pride is a daily roll call. I think everything about yourself is a daily roll call if you want to improve who you are. That means every day you have to go, am I doing this out of my ego? Or am I having this emotional reaction to the comment this dude left for the right reasons? should I even be emotional about this? Having those
Mm-hmm.
conversations with yourself and being introspective and analyzing things, I think, is critical. Otherwise, you mentioned earlier, when money comes into the equation in a business partnership, and it's a lot of money, all of a sudden, there are these issues. When you said that, what entered my mind was almost as bad or worse is fame. So when notoriety and fame goes to somebody, I have seen the attention that someone gets from the public eye just completely alter who they were a year before or 2 years before that. And then I've seen the fame and the ego completely morph them into something unrecognizable and something I couldn't stand to be around. And fame can do a number on people, can completely wreck folks. And some people just can't handle it. And I think the same is true with the money. Some people get in that vein where all that money comes pouring in, and then they turn into, a monster, Jekyll and Hyde, and so, but yeah, I think it's a daily roll call. I always tell myself that, each day, especially I always, C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity, he talked about this quote. I think it's chapter 10. I don't remember exactly, but it's about pride and ego. And he says, in the book, he talks about, do you wonder if you have pride? Do you have an ego? He says, if a guy walks into a room and he's got an ego, just wants to be the big noise, the life of the party, thinks he's all that. He's telling you and everybody else. He's telling all the jokes. Everybody's paying attention. He can't even let anybody else talk. It's all about him. He's narcissistic. He's like, if that guy triggers in you an extreme hatred of him, then you have an ego too. Like, that's your check. That's your litmus test.
You tend to see your worst qualities in others.
Two people, if you have a big ego, the one thing someone with a giant ego can't stand is another person with a giant ego. They can't be in the same room together. They can't do it. Yeah. So he's like, ask yourself, you know who those guys are with those massive egos. When they come in the room, are you the kind of guy that's like, yeah, he's got an ego, whatever. It's who he is. I wish he was better. But that's how he is. And it rolls off your back. You don't have, you got some humility in you. But if he walks in the room and you are blinded by annoyance and rage, you got an ego problem, dude. That's your test. Absolutely. That should be the red flag, because two people with massive egos cannot tolerate each other.